takes, that's you. 3 takes, not me. 2 takes if you lucky. First take, stop me. 4 takes, that's you. 3 takes, not me. 2 takes if you lucky. First take, you got me.
Hey guys, welcome back to another year of the Basement League Plus and the Cobb and Dash Show. Cobb, not the reigning champ anymore, as you can see, he doesn't have the throne he's sitting on. Poor guy. He could have had a three-peat. He was so close, but yet he got dominated in the championship, so far away actually. But how are you doing, man? How you feeling? A year back from the loss.
Yeah, I mean this chair doesn't feel as comfortable as my last one. That's for sure. And it's something that's never been done before. A three-peat was close as anyone has ever gotten, potentially ever will get. Who knows? But hats off to Hoch, first 3-time champion in the league. I guess deserved in that case. I don't know, just happy to be back. That season's behind me now, and on to better things.
Yeah, and plus I think just having that whole like the possible three-peats, kind of just having that on your mind. You feel like you go into the season like kind of like with the weight lifted off your world a little bit, or the world lifted off your shoulders.
Yes, man, but sometimes you enjoy the pressure, and it just feels like something's missing this year. But doesn't mean I'm not going to be as competitive. I can still make a dynasty out of it. 3 out of 4 years, still dynasty.
3 out of 4 is pretty good. I mean, you're still in your championship window, but a lot of people might say with your keepers may not be in the window anymore. Might be past, but we'll get to that as we discuss keepers. So some housekeeping things to get in with it. So obviously this is the keeper selection show, first ever keeper selection show. For those of you who've been waiting to see who the keepers are, don't worry, we got you with this video. But some housekeeping items. Obviously, we have a new person in the league. CP left. I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall after the whole BLM, donation instead of actual winnings. That was kind of the writing on the wall for the guy. After that, nothing was the same after that. So, fixing the lighting here. Yeah, and he was out. We raised the buy-in for this year. Then we got a tiered buy-in. So next year, the buy-in will go up a little more. But we have Teja replacing CP. Teja, my brother, kind of got me into fantasy, got me and Stu and Barry into fantasy back in the day when we were young kids. So excited to have him in. He's made a lot of moves this past week and just in general throughout this offseason. So excited to have him. And we're just excited to have the draft back at HQ1. We had it last year at HQ1. We're going to have 10 of the 12 owners in attendance. So Reuben and Teja will be on Zoom, where everybody else will be in the basement together, enjoying the draft just per usual. So yeah, I'm excited. You excited for the draft, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while since we've had a few of the owners showing up that'll be showing up this year. So should be a good time. Less than a week away.
Less than a week away. Yeah, really, I can't wait. It's probably my favorite time of the year is the draft.
This time of the year. Oh yeah.
It's amazing. The draft. I mean, obviously the season's great and all, but like the build up to that Saturday, then once Saturday's over, it's kind of like it's emptiness. It's like Christmas after like 6 o'clock. It's like, oh, done.
Always goes by too quickly.
That's why we try to make it as long as possible with our gimmick and everything we do. So it's gonna be exciting to have Hoch receive his trophy, and then also Barry's gonna get his birthday special that we'll have. He's gonna give a little speech about what his role is going to be going forward in the Cobb and Dash show. We used to have Barry's Juice segment, but now we're getting rid of that. I mean, if anyone's seen Barry's stuff on Facebook, we know he's very motivational type guy now. He's got a lot of key stuff he says out there, and he's going to be our motivation guy. Like he's going to we have a Tomato King, and we're going to have a Tomato King, and whoever the Tomato King is each week, Barry will come on the show for his Tomato King segment. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. Barry's Key Talks, maybe. I don't know. But he's gonna talk and give us some motivation to that whoever the 12th place Tomato King guy is, to give him some motivation to get back up and keep playing. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's a great move. In past years, we've seen the last place kind of lose motivation and like kind of just accept their last spot. But I don't think Barry's gonna let that happen on his watch. So excited to see.
Yeah, hopefully he's not the Tomato King.
Yeah, that'd be a little weird.
I don't know. Yeah, he can just give motivation speak, like, just practice his videos. And yeah, I love what Barry's doing. He's doing a real good job with his videos. I told him he keeps doing that kind of stuff. He might get a little host spot on the Cobb and Dash show.
Ooh.
Maybe even his own show on the BL Plus network. I like that idea actually a lot better.
That's pretty good. Could be the Alex Berry Cobb and Dash show, ABCD. Ooh,
Ooh, now we're talking.
pretty good.
Now we're talking. But yeah, so a lot of getting into. So the way the keeper selection show is going to go, pretty much how we do during the season with the when we preview matchups and when we discuss upcoming matchups. And we're going to go one by one, and then we're each going to talk about the keepers for that person, because we have the list. So we're looking at the list right in front of us. And then at the end of the show, Cobb's going to show us what the draft board looks like with all the keepers in. And then he'll end up sharing that on the Facebook page soon after. So I guess we'll begin. I'll go with Adam. I'll start off with Adam, and Alex should be joining us here shortly. He's doing some yard work in the rain, and he'll be joining us shortly after that. But yeah, I'll begin. I will say this with hold on, where the fuck's my list? Hold on a second here. I got it right here. Okay. I will say this, of all people who sent me in their keepers, I think keepers look pretty solid. It's pretty tough to see who were the bottom keepers. But I will say I was kind of shocked with this one guy who sent me his keepers in. And remember, this is locked in. These are his keepers. Barring injury to one of these guys, this is who they have. So they can't, after the show, they can't go back and hear Cobb's key reasons as to why my keepers suck. I can't go back he's right, I'm going to go do something. He can't do that anymore unless the guy has a season-ending injury. He's locked in. So I'm going to begin here. So Adam sent in his keepers. So he's Derrick Henry, second-round pick, tender. Rashad Bateman, 9th-round tender. And then AJ Brown, 20th round tender. I like the AJ Brown one. That's an obvious one. Rashad Bateman, 9th, was the surprise for me of the 3. I thought he was definitely going to keep Amon St. Brown, who was a really big deal for him last year, and the 20th round tender as well. So surprising that he's letting Amon Ross St. Brown go. But Rashad Bateman, not bad. I mean, if you're buying Lamar, that's a solid keep. I'm not, so I'm going to stay away from that. But overall, Derrick Henry is second, and AJ Brown is solid. There's a guys who would go in the first round in this draft. So great. I think it's solid.
Yeah, I mean, he made the move for Derrick Henry at the end of the year last year, and I think it makes a lot of sense for him, since especially he's at the end of the second. You're not going to get talent like that at the end of the second round anyways. And he's got the first overall pick, and I think no name dropping, but I think we have a good idea of who he's about to have in that backfield. And we know it's a premium. You got to pay a premium to get two good running backs, and it's usually a good differentiator for teams. So I get the move there. Rashad Bateman, surprise for me too. I think that's a guy that you could have gotten some value, like a value pick later in the draft. But a lot of people seem to think that he's going to be having a great season. And, this time next year when we're doing the keeper show, we're going to be talking about, 9th round Rashad Bateman being a steal for Adam as a keeper. I'm not huge on AJ Brown or that Eagles offense, but for some reason, everyone's been saying it's going to be great. I'm just still not sold on it. But at the 20th round, it's kind of hard to beat. I mean, AJ Brown skill set wise, still one of the best receivers in the league. So far so good. I mean, Adam's sitting pretty. You can't really his draft board is normal. He didn't make any offseason trade, so no real worry about early round picks or anything being gone.
Mm-hmm. Didn't he? Wasn't he the one who didn't Derrick Henry? Was that in season last year when he traded him? Or was that
He's in season?
Oh, it was
in season. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he can draft properly, I mean, that's a solid team. I don't like Bateman so much, but it's 9th round, so he's got 8 rounds to really make up for that. So,
yep.
All right, take us away with the smartest man in the draft and the guy who's got all the rhymes, Kill God.
Yeah, ZT. He is one of the most, I don't know, sporadic traders in the basement league. He's always looking for key new deals that he can make. This past or this offseason, he did a conditional trade with Teja. So based off of a certain performance of a player, there'd be different picks getting swapped, which Stu and I ended up taking some motivation for in one of our trades. But ZT, he's got running it back with Lamar in the 7th. He's got Alvin Kamara in the 13th, thanks to me. and Terry McLaurin in the 20th. You know, a lot of people are questioning his keepers. A lot of people think he could have made some trades for some other guys instead of sticking to his commanders. You know, he was trying to ship off Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin. You know, hard not to keep him at 20. I get it, but with that offense, who knows? But I mean, ZT also kind of just gave away a first round pick. He had Dash's first round pick in the 12th. And I mean, we just value it differently. He said he didn't need that pick to win this year, which I get, but it's also the price of a first and an eighth next year. That wouldn't have gotten in my first in any year. So just an interesting trades overall, first picks, but I think he's solid. Nothing that blows me out of the water with these guys. Like who knows what's going on with Kamara? I guess he's not going to get suspended this year. It's going to be next year. Lamar, we'll see how the Ravens offense looks like. We kind of touched on that with Bateman. And then the Commanders offense is always a shit show, but you know, PPR, Terry's going to be valuable. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I know he's got a big thing for Lamar Jackson. So yeah, Lamar Jackson did put him in the ass last year. He missed like 6 weeks last year. It's kind of in a 7th round. I mean, it's great. Lamar's great and all, but like I don't know. I think I'm kind of over Lamar. That's a lot of people are in the people who watch football, like the actual analysts. They're kind of over Lamar. You got an unnamed defensive coordinator saying he's not even a good quarterback. Bernard Pollard, former safety for the Ravens, saying he's like a good athlete, not a good quarterback. So a lot of people are kind of done with Lamar. The gimmick's kind of over, I think. Once those mobile quarterbacks start to get hurt, like consistently, with you got lower leg injuries, you got ankle injuries. Once that starts to break down for you, and the guy who's really not throwing is not his thing, I mean, things happen with that. So I know ZT's a very stubborn guy, and he wants to continue riding the Lamar wave. That's fine. I'm not a fan of that. Kamara, we don't know what's going to happen with that suspension. That's still up in the air. That something could happen with that. And then Terry McLaurin, I like Terry McLaurin this year. I think the Commanders going to be really awful this year. And I think they're going to be throwing a lot. And I think Wentz is going to be chucking the ball big time. So I do actually like Terry McLaurin, 20th round tender. You can't beat that. Yeah, the ZT trades, again, they make no sense. And I'm trying to like let Teja know about our league and how there's certain guys in this league who think they're smarter than everybody else. So they make moves that's like, oh my God, what the hell? Is he seeing something that nobody else is seeing? He must be. He knows something. So that's what ZT does. So yeah, I think bottom tier keepers, these three. I'm not looking at these keepers and saying, wow, playoffs for ZT this year. I'm not. I don't think playoffs for ZT this year. I haven't seen his team. Obviously we haven't drafted yet, but based on those three, he's gonna have to have a really good draft for me to be like, yep, I'm buying ZT this year. I'm not buying ZT this year. I'm selling hard. If it was a stock, I'm selling before we even get to see what's going on. So the future is looking down on ZT right now. But are you a McLaurin fan this year?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're gonna have to throw it. It's just not a groundbreaking. I mean, the talent's there, obviously, but I don't know. It's just not a keeper that's going to separate you from this bunch, especially with some of the guys we're going to get to later. It's just not really seeing a competitive lineup right now.
There's a reason why we're talking about these guys first in this whole thing, is because these guys were bottom tier guys last year, and it's looking like can continue that way for a little while. Poor guys. So Alex is still not on yet, but we're gonna get to Dave Reuben, who's the 3rd pick overall. He was the 3rd worst team last year. So Reuben, his offseason is really making a lot of sense to me. So he trades me Eli Mitchell for a 5th round pick. No, he trades me a 5th round pick for Eli Mitchell. And Eli Mitchell's not amongst his 3 keepers that he sent me. So Eli Mitchell, he was a 20th round tender, and now he's going back to the draft and probably a top 3 round pick, which is unfortunate for his tender status. But okay, he's got James Conner, who he just traded for this week from Alex. I think he traded a 7th for him.
6th and 8th, I think.
Wow.
Or 6th. Yeah,
6th.
something like that.
Okay,
6th. I think it's 6th.
Okay, so he traded a 6th.
And he got an 8th back.
So he could keep James Conner.
Yeah.
Really, he only got a 6th. He traded a 6th. That's terrible. Okay, so James Conner, 8th round tender, Jalen Waddle, 8th round tender, and then Mark Andrews, 9th round tender. So overall, good keeps for the good tenders for all 3 of these guys: Conner, Waddle, and Mark Andrews. I like Andrews. Andrews, as far as we've spoken about, he's the first tight end off the board as far as keepers. We're going to get to it, but there's 3 tight ends who are gone already. When we get to the other one, so 2 more tight ends to go. I like his team. I'm not a big James Conner fan. I think James Conner was a contract year last year. He did his thing in a contract year. He got good money. So I don't know. Can he sustain that? I've had him in many years in this league, and he's always questionable every week. He missed a lot of time. Now he's got a contract. He can miss that time. Those guys tend to not play so hard and when they make their money. Jalen Waddle I like, but Tyreek Hill's there now. What's that mean for Jalen Waddle's future? And then Mark Andrews. Obviously, I like Mark Andrews. I just talked about Lamar can't throw the ball. Well, he definitely likes to check down to a Mark Andrews big time. So I love Mark Andrews. 9th round tenor is amazing. Kind of silly that Hoch actually traded him. I think Hoch actually should have kept him. I think Hoch actually traded a good amount for him last year. So interesting that he got rid of him. But yeah, I think Reuben, the only thing I don't like about Reuben's all season was him trading me the 5th for Eli Mitchell and then not keeping Eli Mitchell. Fitz high pick. I mean, you don't just trade that for a guy you're not going to keep. So that's the only thing I don't like that he did. But hey, the value for Waddle and Andrews is amazing. And if Connor can pull off what he did last year at 8th round tenor, that's great. So I like it. Just don't like what he traded this offseason.
Like when I'm looking at these keepers, obviously Mark Andrews is great, but these are all guys that, like, if they were my 3rd keeper, like in my other they just seem more like 3rd, like last ditch keepers to me, with Waddle and Connor. Like, I'm not, like you said, that there's options on that Miami offense, especially now with Hill. They also have Mike Gesicki, who is getting a lot of action. They got the trio of running backs that they brought in, but like, I don't know. I'm not a Miami offense fan, even though Waddle is fun. Connor he was half of his points were just vulture touchdowns. Like at the one, like when the Cardinals were stopped at the 1, Connor was able to pound it. And not to discredit all of them, but I am just absolutely not a James Conner fan. I just don't think was worth that trade. I think there was other keepers that people didn't keep that were out there that were better options.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing and we'll get to this when we get to the draft board, the thing that worries me the most about Reuben is just how many picks he doesn't have in that mid round. Like he has a 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, and 3rd round pick, but then he doesn't have a 4th, 5th, 6th. He does have a 7th, but then he doesn't have an 8th or a 9th. So like he's got to nail those early picks, or he's going to be in trouble. And this is kind of similar to ZT's. These keepers aren't ones that scare me as much as some of the other ones. So I'd say kind of bottom tier for me.
Yeah, it's interesting about Reuben is that like he was so relevant just 2 years ago, where he was in the championship against me. He beat me, loses to me, and then plays you in the championship. Correct?
Yeah, loses to me.
I mean, and then now we're looking at his keepers right now. We're like, whoa, what is this? I mean, is this is bottom tier? I like that a guy is trading his picks to try to make his team right, and I love that. I just don't get. How could you be a fan of Eli Mitchell and trade a 5th round pick for him, and then about 2 months later be like, I'm not a fan of him anymore. I'm done. Like this is it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get it. You had a couple of those. You had the Kadarius Toney trade and the Eli Mitchell. Those guys kind of got you some picks back, even
Well,
though they're not being kept.
that's the best part. Kadarius Toney not only got me the 4th because he gave me a 4th to take. He gave me Eli Mitchell and a 4th for Kadarius Toney, and then and I got that 4th with Eli Mitchell, and so then I traded Eli Mitchell to somebody else. So essentially, Kadarius Toney got me a 4th and a 5th. And you can probably get him around 19 in this draft.
Impressive stuff over there.
Paul's a good dude. I tell you, man. Those Italians are giving people. You should know about the Italians, Mister. No, we won't bring back old wounds. It's your turn. So the next this is the 4th pick. So the 4th worst team last year was Stu Adams, who we saw recently doing his. You know what? Actually, before we continue, I want to say congratulations and kudos to Adam Milowich, who took the fucking IHOP challenge like a king, and then I'm not going to congratulate Stu because he didn't actually fulfill his social media challenge last year, so that's why he had to do the 24 pancakes at IHOP. So, but good job, both you guys. You guys took it like men, and hell yeah.
But Stu's friend getting crepes or whatever at IHOP.
Uh, so gross, dude.
Jesus.
That would make me yak, dude.
uh looked at least Stu's keepers look better than that. So with Stu, he had a, I think, an unfortunate season. I think Stu always talks about how he always goes up against teams that just blow up. So his fantasy defense is never that great. But to his credit, he went out and made moves this offseason. I don't think any of these keepers or guys that he had, or these are all new keepers for him. So he has CeeDee Lamb in the 6th, Nick Chubb in the 9th, and Michael Pittman in the 9th, all of which are fire. And he still has his top 3 picks
Yeah.
in the draft. So I mean, Stu, this is a turnaround season for Stu, I think. Obviously, I mean, CeeDee Lamb, that's going to be one of the, especially with Amari Cooper gone, and I think Gallup's still going to be injured for a while. He's in line to get a lot of work. And then Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb, just RB1 through and through. We know how valuable those guys are. And then Michael Pittman, he's guy I handed over to Stu with that conditional trade we had. That I'm hoping Pittman does really well, and I end up getting a 3rd round pick next year. So, which I do think he ends up being a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. So we'll see. And we see Alex coming on. What's going on, man?
Hey, doing good. I'm excited to be here. I was a little late. I was finishing up with my other fantasy show. So, as we know, 3rd weekend in August right now, completely dedicated to fantasy. So, been grinding at it. Excited for next week.
Yeah, we just ran through the first 3 guys, Adam, GT, and Rodens keepers. Anything stand out between those 3?
Well, I mean, looking at it, I mean, I'm sure you guys gave great insight, and not to immediately jump on and start dogging people. I mean, for me, I definitely ran a mock draft last night. I did some insight on everyone's keepers and whatnot. For me, and you guys probably dove into some generalities already. I feel like there's definitely there's not necessarily a team that I'm afraid of this year, but there's definitely kind of a divide where I feel like there's kind of a bottom 5 teams or so. And for me, just looking at it, I feel like some of those teams that you already mentioned are probably towards the bottom end for myself personally. I think a lot of those guys have really solid options. I think they're going to have their, some ground to make up. I think they might be lacking a couple heavy hitters, but other than that, I mean, I don't think there's any team this year that I think's out of it in terms of making the playoffs. So it just really depends on the draft prep that they have, the people that they hit on the draft, and kind of how they execute the first couple of weeks of this season.
We did mention just all what you just said, that none of these teams are going to be doing anything. There's a reason why these teams are bottom 4 or bottom 3, and I think that might have to stay the same for a little while until these teams start to recalibrate and go in a different direction. Right now, Cobb just got done finishing up on Stu's team. Did you want to add any more to Stu's team, Cobb? Or
No, I just think this is a bounce back year for Stu. He was last place 2 years ago, 4th last this year, almost back to back lasts, but he pulled it together at the end of the season. But I think this is a bounce back year for Stu.
I have to agree with that. I think I was going to say that I think Stu's one of the teams that didn't miss the playoffs this past year that's going to make the playoffs this year, just based on keepers. I don't know how his draft's going to go. That could go either way, like just drafting Mike Davis and Travis Etienne back to back, like that kind of way. It could go south real fast if you do that. Yeah, I like Stu's keepers. I like all tenders. It's the first time he's had a legit running back going into the season in a really long time. He's gone the all receiver route over the last few years, and then just hoping a decent RB would fall to him. I like what he's doing here. He's got Nick Chubb, Georgia guy. He's a big Georgia fan. You got Michael Pittman and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, two solid young receivers and a nice running back at the 9th round. I mean, that's what you want. So yeah, I think Stu's on bounce back. I think he will make the playoffs this year. That's my bold prediction for the episode. Alex.
Yeah, with Stu, he's actually I didn't necessarily rank everyone 1 through 12. I did have a bottom 5. Stu was not one of those owners in my bottom 5 here. He was kind of towards the middle of the pack. I have him on that fringe, anywhere from 5 through 8, standing. I think he absolutely has got a good shot to make the playoffs this year. To note, he did change his team name to mention Barry in it. And as we know, every single team in league history that's ever had Barry's name in it has made the playoffs. So for that record as being a Barry name stan, I do hope he does make the playoffs. So I will be rooting for Stu. Here's my insight. Whenever I evaluate keepers, you have to look a little bit at their draft capital. And so he does have his first 3 picks, of this draft. When you look at his, and I always like to look at it from a redraft standpoint. If you were to plug his roster into a redraft, would it make sense? Meaning, like, does he have a first round pick? What does he have someone that would be taking the second round pick? So on and so forth. When I look at his keepers right now, for me, Nick Chubb and CeeDee Lamb are going in the second round, and then Michael Pittman's a 3rd round guy. So he already just going into the draft, he's got 2 second-round ADP guys and a 3rd-round guy. He's missing that first-round tender, but luckily for him, he's got the 4th overall pick in this year's draft. And not to name drop, I'm not going to name drop any guys, but if you do look at where the rankings are at, he's basically probably going to have another high-end second-round running back, pretty much where I kind of have, someone falling to him at that point. So although he's lacking maybe that first round ADP guy, he's going to have 3 second round, tender type of guys. And then Michael Pittman, and he'll still have a second round pick and 3rd round pick. So even though he's missing that extreme high end production, having 3 second round, ADP guys is going to elevate him. It's going to make up for that difference. So I think he's definitely in a position prime for a playoff run. So we'll see what he can do. If he does make the playoffs, for me, it would be as a wild card. I think he absolutely has a shot. So that's where I have Stu.
And you brought up Marcus Berry for a second. I just want to make note. Earlier on the show, we discussed that Marcus Berry's fitness is back. And it is back. And because of that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Marcus Berry Fitness 2-week challenge. Get your fitness on. Take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Marcus here. If you're looking to drop 5 to 10 pounds over the next 14 days, well, I'm launching a free 14-day fitness challenge. We're getting workouts, nutrition plans, weekly check-ins, as well as free coaching from me. If you're interested, either like this post, DM me, or leave a comment below with the arm flex emoji. Let's fucking go.
All right, we're back. See, I could do that. I could do this when we're not live. We could take commercial breaks when we're not live. But when we are live, we can't do that. So, good. It's always good to have a Marcus Berry Fitness content. If you're not following him, please follow him. It's really like it's a must follow. It really is. You can ask. I've had guys in the league like Matt Hodge text me about Marcus Berry Fitness videos, asking me like about his certain workouts. And Matt Hodge is a workout warrior, and yet he's seen Barry do these things. He's like, dude, I need to get in on this. So I'm like, yeah, just text him. So just text him. All right. So Alex, we're going to the 5th worst team last year, and that's Paul Perga Beasley. So I'm going to have you do some Paul Perga Beasley. What do you think about Paul's squad? His every year early round tender squad that he has.
So the one thing that he's done this year is he's opened up his first round pick. I feel like I can't remember a year where Paul had a first round pick. It's been a while. So I'm interested to see what he's going to do with that. I do know after that, I just want to double check. After Paul, has that pick there, actually, does he have 2 first round picks?
He has 2 first rounds. He got the one from ZT.
Yep. So he's got 2 first round picks, and he doesn't pick again for a while. So, I mean, he's primed to have a good season this year. As we know, last season, I think he probably had one of the scarier rosters, throughout the entire year, and just absolutely failed to capitalize on, making the playoffs. It was actually probably one of the biggest downfalls I've ever seen. I think he literally just needed to win one of his last like 4 or 5 games. He went on to it, probably one of the biggest chokes in basement league history. But talking about Paul's team, so his keepers, he's got Stephon Diggs in the second round, Jonathan Taylor in the third, and Justin Herbert in the fourth round. Right off the bat, right there, I was talking a little bit about ADPs with Stu's team. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, pretty much the unanimous first overall pick in pretty much all redrafts. He's got Stephon Diggs, who's pretty much going right towards the end of the first round. So he's got 2 first-round tender guys and then a quarterback lockdown. I think Justin Herbert's pretty much going the 4th round in most drafts right now, but he's got that quarterback locked down. And because he's got those 2 first-round picks, I really think this is a playoff team, in my opinion. I think he's going to have a great season. He has a shot with this roster to get a bye week. I mean, realistically, he's going to have. I'll say it right now. He has a shot. Like I said, I don't think there's any team that stands out to me necessarily. I think he's probably a top 4 team right now. He's got a shot to get a bye. Between Diggs and between Diggs and Jonathan Taylor, he's going to have 2 first-round ADP guys. He's going to have 2 first-round picks. That's going to put him in a really good position, and he already has Herbert. Even though he might not pick again for a little bit, I think with that core roster and knowing him, if he hits on some later guys just for depth bench, I really think this can be a top team. So definitely watch out for Paul. Usually I'm not a Paul guy, but I think he set himself up well.
You're usually not a Paul guy. I will say Paul's posts have made little to no sense to me this offseason, talking about trading out of the first. Then he fucking trades to get back into another pick in the first. So like, I'm texting him about trades, and he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna hold off." And then all of a sudden, next minute, I know he's trading for another first. Like, dude, you're not making any sense. I will say, yeah, it's great. He finally has his first round pick open, but can't deny he's got 2 first round picks. That late first, it's not really. I mean, you're looking at like 3rd round talent with that late first. Really, you are. But 2, 3, and 4, those are still, even having 2 first round picks, those are still a lot of picks. Actually, now that I think about it, because Paul traded me his, Paul had multiple 4th round picks. Okay. I was going to say, because he traded me his 4th round pick. And I was like, how is he going to keep Herbert with that? He traded me a 4th round pick. I don't know whose 4th round it was, but, 2, 3, and 4, man, that's still a lot of guys in the early rounds of the draft. So like, yeah, you have 2 firsts, but that's still, I don't know, because you have quarterback, running back, receiver. Okay. So let's say he goes, running back, receiver. So then he has 1 more flex and 1 more tight end to get, and he won't be picking again till the 6th round or 5th round. Does he even have his 5th? I don't know what the draft board says.
Let's see.
I don't.
He doesn't. Nope.
I don't believe so.
He has 6th. Oh no, he has someone's 5th. He has Reuben's 5th.
Okay. All right. So he'll be back in the 5th for his last flex or tight end. So I mean, I'm not really buying Paul. I think he'll make the playoffs, but I'm not buying this bye week shit. No. Paul's gonna be teetering around 5th and 6th. I'm gonna say him and Stu are gonna be 5th and 6th seed going into the playoffs next year. I like that. Sounds good to me. But yeah, good keepers as far as JT 3rd round, Diggs 2nd round. I mean, those are high. I mean, Diggs would be going in the 2nd round, late 1st, 2nd round. So man, not really. And then Herbert 4th round. That's probably the highest of all the quarterbacks being kept. So I'm not the biggest fan of keeping quarterbacks, but 4th round quarterback, yeah, I'm not a fan of that at all. 4th, no. All right, that's it for me. What do you got on Paul, Cobb?
Sitting talking to someone who kept quarterback in the 3rd round 2 years in a row.
You?
Kyler Murray.
Yeah, you had a stack though, didn't you?
Yeah, so it made sense.
Different.
Which maybe that's what Paul's going for.
Ooh. Well, I don't think he's going to get one of them.
Can't name drop, but yeah. No, I'm more on the side with Alex, where I think Paul is going to be one of the top teams. I think he's easily going to have one of the better starting lineups in the league with just having those 2 first round picks. Yeah, he doesn't have a 2nd or 3rd or 4th, I guess. But I mean, Herbert, Taylor, and Diggs all have, you can make an argument that they're going to be number 1 in their position this year, or have the potential to be number one in each of their positions this year. So as long as Paul doesn't run into that bad luck he had at the end of the season, I'm thinking he's going to be one of the top teams. And I think it's also kind of a breath of fresh air that we don't have just one team that has three juggernaut running backs finally.
Yeah.
Because those were always tough matchups where one
We never really
90%
saw
of the team.
Barkley.
Yeah, that's true. But it was mainly the running backs were the bread and butter, and while they kept them competitive, didn't really get them over the hump. So it's interesting to see them adjust. So no, I think he's gonna be one of the better teams this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'll do our next one here. So this is our new guy we gave a nice little introductory to in the beginning of the show, Teja Dash. Sixth worst team took over CP's team. I mentioned earlier the downfall of CP was when he really tried to tell the whole league to donate the winnings to a BLM, some BLM stuff. And I'm all for BLM, but not at the expense of the BL plus. Okay, I'm more of a BL plus guy than I am a BLM guy. But yeah, basement league matters. Okay, I didn't think about that. But yeah, so Teja took over. So that was, I mean, he made like three after that whole thing happened, that awkwardness of that draft on your deck, your patio, Cobb. I think CP spent $0 in budget since then. That was 2 years ago, but $0. And I think he made three like fucking free agent acquisitions. Really, and that's what we're talking about here. So he's been long gone for a while. It's sad. But Teja, I think it's gonna be a great addition. He's already making more moves than CP's made in the last 10 years. Not joking. So Teja, his keepers are Brandon Cooks, 8th round pick, Keenan Allen, 10th round pick, and Cam Akers, 16th round pick, which he acquired. Well, all these guys, besides Brandon Cooks, he acquired. He's pretty much revamped that entire team. Cooks was a CP guy. Cam Akers, he traded with ZT on the first ever trade that's going to be involving a player's points? Is it points that they're going by? I like that. It really changed the game because then Cobb and Stu ended up doing a trade very similar to that. So a lot of people really like that whole thing that ZT and Teja had cooking up. And they also did like 5 deals with each other with draft picks. So they got a good little relationship there. That Keenan Allen, you got him from Stu. That's a solid trade. Keenan Allen's a solid fantasy guy. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. This one's an interesting team. I don't think, based on these keepers, this is not a playoff team. I think Tage is 2 years away from making this really playoff caliber type team. The thing that really sucks about this is if you look at CP's roster, that team was not 6th overall. That team was like bottom 2. Like team-wise, that's a really bad team to take over because you're not even getting a top flight pick. You're getting a fucking like middle of the round pick, and you're getting like a mediocre team. So that's really rough that CP was like eking out wins. He fucked me. I think he got me twice last year. I lost my bye because of him. Or no, I lost because of Adam, I think. It was either CP or Adam. I got fucked.
Yeah, I think it was Adam.
Yeah. But I like it. I think it's better than what CP had going into it. But yeah, I think Tage's going to be one to watch here. May not be a team that makes playoffs, but I think it's a team that towards the end of the season, when you're trying to lock up that 1 or 2 bye, needs to be a team you don't want to play just because, you're going to have to fucking go against a guy who's really looking at his lineup. So that's where I am on that. Cobb, what do you think?
Yeah, no insult to Teja, it's just new teams don't typically have great success their first season. So I'm not expecting much in the first season here, but I mean, you kind of see it. People kind of get the lay of the land when they first join. Teja traded for 2 players that he's not keeping, similar to some other owners. And I think this is the offseason that happened the most. Where people were trading for players and just not keeping them, or like invested a lot and just didn't keep the people. But yeah, I mean, from what I've seen and what I've heard, Tage is going to be a good owner. Going to be very active, which is what we love to see. And then I don't know, just Keenan Allen is good in the 10th. Giving up a 4th for him was, high investment, but I think that's good. Brandon Cooks one kind of confuses me a little bit, but again, I don't know if he really wanted to keep any of the like Cordell Patterson or Devin Singletary guys that he traded for. But all in all, like you said, CP's team was not. They definitely should have been one of the top 2 picks. So it's just where it ended up falling. So that would have been better for Teja, but he's made it work. He traded up to the 3rd overall pick. So, well, interested to see where he how he's able to build the team further.
Alex, where do you stand on Teja's team?
Yeah,
Those
I
two
mean, I have a couple thoughts. I mean, I know you did a great introduction, before I joined the episode on Teja. Not, I mean, people know who he is, but I don't think people know him on a fantasy and a personal level. I don't think there's that many people in this league that have been in the league with Teja before. I'll say this because I'm probably in 5 or 6 leagues with Teja right now. Pound for pound, he might be one of, if not the best fantasy owner that I know. He's definitely up there. And in terms of longevity, if you look at his track record for the last 10 years, I mean, his resume might be the best that I've played with. And you can't take that lightly. I think he's a fantastic owner and the perfect addition for Basement League Plus. But at some point, you are limited by your roster and everything else. I definitely have this as one of those bottom 5 that I was referring to earlier, rosters and whatnot. He does have a high first, but realistically, I always judge it based off, the ADP that I was saying. When you look at it realistically, Keenan Allen's like a high 3rd round pick. Cam Akers is going kind of early 4th. I've seen him go as high as late 3rd. And then Cooks I've seen him go as high as the 4th round. And obviously he's got a 1st round pick. So it's okay. I mean, he'll probably get like a 2nd round ADP type of guy with his 1st overall pick. But he's still missing that top talent. And that's really what it takes to win in this league. Realistically, like as much depth as you can build. If you look at his core roster, including his 1st round pick, if he's got a 2nd round ADP guy, a 3rd round, a 4th, and like a 5th round ADP guy in his roster, you can only go so far without having that bell cow to anchor you down. So I think he will be limited by that. But I don't think Teja is somebody you can take lightly in doubt. I had actually a personal conversation with him like 2 weeks ago about his team and his roster in Basement League. And I kind of was alluding to the fact that, yeah, like I think where he's at, I think in 2 years, he can be in a position in 2023 for a championship run if he rebuilds properly. And without even blinking, he was like, I don't know, I think I have a shot this year. The confidence that he portrayed to me in that conversation, I mean, knowing his track record, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a push towards the end of the year. But realistically, I don't have him making the playoffs. Knowing his track record, though, he'll be one of those teams that, like, by the end of the season, he starts to build a reputation where, like, I might not, just as the owner alone, I don't know if I want to play him. And I think he'll make a push. Realistically, I think he'll probably finish like 8th. That's where I got him this year.
I mean, I could see it. I could see him making the playoffs and not making a championship push. Yeah, I don't know where he thinks he can come into this league and make a push to the championship. That's bold. That's real bold. I know Cobb's got to run here, so Cobb, before Alex and I will continue doing the keepers, do you want to share the screen of what everything looks like right now, and then you'll obviously post that in the group after. But take a look at what we got here. Wow, look how pretty that looks.
Oh, it's great. And you kind of get some spoilers of the keepers coming up, but yeah, a lot of activity. I don't think it's as much as I think last year we had like record-breaking trade number. But we've got all the draft boards set up. You can see how few picks some people have. And you can also see some teams that had no activity. But yeah, quick hit thoughts. It's just going to be, I think this is going to be the most interesting, like, first 2-3 rounds that we've had in a while. There's a lot of mixed talent, and I'm interested to see where people fall. I don't have a lot of early picks, which sucks, but I feel like there's such a big group of people that are like so close together, like rank wise, that they might fall back to my later picks, hopefully.
Before you go, do you want to give us, because at the end of this, we're going to go championship based on 3 keepers. Who's your champion based on the 3 keepers?
Championship or champion?
Champion.
Oh man, I think Hoch is guaranteed to go back to back. He's going to be the first one that did back to back twice, and he's going to start up his new dynasty. I just think his trio of keepers. Alex was saying he's not really scared of any keepers. I'm pretty scared of Hodge's team. He doesn't have the early picks, but he's got some superstars, some of the top players in fantasy on his team. So I kind of want to, I don't know, Hodge Paul championship. Hodge takes it.
Wow. That's such a dude.
Yeah.
It's gonna get no ratings. No one's gonna watch that. Watch that.
Listen, man, one of those years, I'm saying that's my shot.
Man. So you don't think based on keepers, you're not really sold in your guys, huh?
I mean, having to keep mixing at 1 and then also Dalvin Cook at 3, having limited early picks, kind of hurts. But we'll see. I have faith in my drafting. I think I'll be up there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll
I have faith in my drafting too, and I was trying to give Teja a good leeway on how this league is set up. There's a lot of guys who will take fucking just players. You're like, what? Why is this happening right now? Like Hoch drafting Damian Harris in round 2, and then trading him for a fucking Justin Fields. Like, I mean,
in the 5th or 6th.
Unreal. So there's a lot of stuff like that happens. Barry, waiting until the last 2 seconds to make a pick, and then he picks a guy that no one was touching. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and where it's like, okay, well, I think I can be all right with my draft. So
yeah. No, I think everyone's pretty interesting. I don't know. I think most of the teams that make the playoffs consistently are the teams that are good at drafting. So I don't know if we're gonna have that much of a shakeup this year, but anything can happen in the basement league.
Last question before you go, Cobb. Who lasts the longest from the Cobb and Dash show hosts? Which team's gonna, based on keepers, which team lasts the longest?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's tough. All 3 of our keepers are really good.
I'm gonna stay with my guys. I didn't give them the championship this year, but I'm confident. I think we might all see each other in the playoffs, so it's definitely a tough pick. I do think we're in the top half of the league as usual. We put in the time and the effort, as you can see just with this show. We're always ahead of the game. So
I mean, you don't want to face this team in the playoffs, though. Alex knows what happens when you go up against this train in the playoffs, especially Thursday night.
One more thing I will say, just based off of the last couple of guys we're going to be talking. This is once we get to the end of this, or the back half. This is where all the really good keepers start popping out. Reuben not keeping Mike Williams in the 8th is probably the biggest shock to me as far as what keepers people could have had. I know Kyle Pitts in the 4th, attractive, but I don't know. Mike Williams is gonna, 8th rounder, young receiver, just got paid. I just would have. That was one of the more shocking no keeps that I saw out of the other teams. So
yeah. That is weird. Interesting too. I didn't realize the 8th round was such a big round for a lot of keepers. I think it's the most keepers in one round.
Yeah.
Huh.
8th and the 9th, man.
Yeah. And the 20th. Well, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That's about to happen.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, overall, I think it's a good list for everybody. And I'm excited to see how all this stuff shakes out. But Cobb, thanks for doing that for us. You'll after we post this, then post the I want people to watch this first. Give about an hour, then post the other thing.
Right. Will do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the show with everyone else.
Awesome, buddy. Well, enjoy the rest of your night, man.
Yeah, you guys too.
All right, so now we're going to your team, Alex. If you want to, I mean, people probably saw the spreadsheet there, but you want to tell us who your 3 keepers are and give us your rationale behind it.
Yeah, so my 3 keepers right now, Cooper Kupp in the 2nd round, Javonte Williams in the 5th round, and playoff Lenny, 260 Lenny in the 7th. So that's what I'm keeping. Let me dive into a little insight on where I view my team at right now. My biggest issue is draft capital. Just in terms of, where I'm at, I feel pretty good realistically. So let me dive into kind of my thought process behind it. That same conversation I was having with all those other teams. When you look at ADP, Cooper Kupp is pretty much the first receiver off the board in every single thing I've seen. I've seen him go as high as even like the 103 slot in redraft. So he's a high first round pick. Then you got Javonte and Fournette. Both of them are going around the mid to late second in pretty much every mock draft I've seen for redrafts. So right away, even though I don't have a lot of picks going into the season, I'm going into the season with Cooper Kupp as the number 1 fantasy wide receiver, first round draft pick, and then 2 second round, picks. So like theoretically, if this was a redraft after, round 3 of 3 rounds of picking, if those 3 were on my roster, I would feel phenomenal because it's very hard to have someone like Fournette or Javonte sneak into that third round like that. It's pretty much not going to happen. So right away, going just off the first 3 off the board, I'm feeling pretty good about it. And then I have a first round pick as well. I know I was name dropping a couple of people, earlier in the week to you that maybe you weren't a fan of me potentially taking with that first overall pick of mine at the 107 slot. I ran a couple mocks last night. I'm more than likely actually probably going to go with someone else.
What?
We'll see how it goes. There's a chance that player falls. Sequence of events who I'm potentially looking at is gone, and I end up going with him. We'll see. It's going to be a coin flip decision, but I'm feeling comfortable. I ran pretty much a mock draft.
Receiver or running back?
What's that?
Receiver or running back? You don't have to tell me his name.
Probably running back.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'll see. I basically went through every scenario where the top 6 guys returning, regardless of position, get taken in any circumstance. I'm very comfortable because when I do my rankings of the top 7 players being sent back, I actually find, for me personally, my rankings, I think there's a drop off at like number 8 or 9. So I'm pretty much comfortable with whoever falls to me at that point. So I'm going to feel really good about my team. And then I do have limited capital, but just the way I feel about how much work I've been putting into, doing mocks and stuff like that, I feel like in those later rounds, I'm going to draft 2 or 3 players that I feel like later in the season, whether it be rookies or kind of some underrated players, I feel like could be championship winning type of guys. So if they hit, I feel pretty good. Realistically, I don't think I'm going to get a bye, but I feel like a pretty solid lock for the playoffs. I have myself in like the 4 to 5 slot. That's kind of where I have myself finishing. Just being realistic and trying to be unbiased. That's where I have myself. I think it's a good team. The one thing I do think that could happen is Cooper Kupp being the number 1 fantasy receiver. And I'm really high on Javonte this year. For me, Javonte was a long-term investment, and I had to give up a 4th and 8th this year. So looking into the future, and I purposely, even with the lack of draft capital now, I easily could have traded future picks to load up for this year, but I wanted to make sure I had a clean slate for next year so I'd be loaded up. So my future is looking bright, in my opinion, if Javonte hits the way that I think he can. Updated reports are saying that it's going to be potentially a 70-30 split now between him and Melvin Gordon. Before it's going to be 50-50. If that's the case, like I think he's got a chance to blow up this year. And if he ends up being a top 5 fantasy running back with Cobb and then Fournette, and who I'm going to take up my 101 slot and whatnot, and where I see myself, I think I'm going to do just fine, and I should be a pretty comfortable playoff team.
Yeah, I obviously like Cooper Kupp. Javonte, he looked good. As a Chief fan, playing against him 2 times last year, I didn't think they gave him the ball enough. Yeah, he looked good last year, man. And then Lenny was on my team last year, man. I rode him to the fucking ground, dude. Yeah, he was solid. So if you look at worst case scenario with these 3 keepers, I think it's not that bad. The worst case scenario for these guys, they're all solid guys, and Javonte's young, so he's not going to fall off a cliff, and Melvin Gordon's not taking that job again. And best case scenario, Javonte's the guy. He's top 10 back. Kupp's doing what he did last year, and Lenny's doing what he did last year again. They don't really have another RB in that offense. And Lenny showed that he could catch the ball last year. So Lenny was a full-on 3-down back last year, and I know Ronald Jones went before him in the draft, and I got Lenny in round 8, and I traded him to you for a 6th. So Yeah, I would say your whole thing is going to be with your draft capital. You don't have a ton of picks in that early area. So it's going to be like you trying to find some bargains. You know, you got to hit on your picks, and you kind of have to do what I did last year. I had to hit on all my picks, and I did. With
Yeah.
like the rounds like 6 through 10, you have to hit on those picks. So I mean and you have your early round pick too. So like you'll be all right. I think you'll be in the playoffs again. I don't think you're going to be in the bottom. You're not bottom 6. I mean, I'm looking at bottom 6 teams. That's not a bottom 16. So
Yeah. I mean, realistically, because I have a 1, 3, and a 6, and I'm trying to move back in the third so I can get basically a 1, 4, 5, 6, and I have a bunch of later picks between like 8 to 13. I have a bunch of picks in those ranges. I feel fine as long if I get hit with the injury bug and like Cup and like 2 out of my 3 keepers go down, then like that's where I could fall off. If my guys stay healthy, I'm very confident that this will be a playoff team, no doubt. And I would say my weakest keeper is probably Fournette, but realistically, like with the Brady news of him missing a lot of camp, if anything, that's just less time for Brady to get rapport with some of the newer receivers on that offense. And if anything, he's just going to fall back to what he knows, and he's got a good rapport already with Fournette just checking down. So I think if anything, it just helps him. So I feel good. I know I do have a tough start of this season. We mentioned Hoch's team as probably being one of the top 3 teams going into week 1. I'm playing in week 1. I think I play you maybe week 2, and another good team week 3. So I got my work cut out for myself, but I feel like I'll be there. Like I said, I got myself finishing 4 to 5.
yeah, you'll be ready to rock by week 5.
Oh yeah,
you get past those teams, those juggernauts.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next this is the 8th worst team last year. Made his first playoff appearance in the Basement League. So Reuben, and he made some trades this offseason. So we're gonna go. His keepers are Najee Harris, 1st round tender, Kyle Pitts, 4th round tender, and Joe Burrow, 8th round tender. The Joe Burrow trade, probably the biggest fleecing of the offseason. And of course, Matt Hoch was involved with that one. He traded Josh Allen for Joe Burrow and got a 1st, I believe. He got Hoch's 1st and like a 3rd, I think. He got a lot of picks for Josh Allen. And Joe Burrow, let's not forget, let me remind you, Joe Burrow was probably the MVP of the playoffs last year. Joe Burrow won Hoch with a stack of Chase and Burrow, won Hoch our Basement League Plus championship. Without those two, Hoch would not be sitting in the with his 3rd trophy in the league. So I don't know what Hoch was thinking. I think Hoch is just a fan of Josh Allen. He likes maybe his tweets that he had back in the day. Maybe Hoch is a big fan of those. I don't know. I don't know why he's such a big fan of him. And he had Josh Allen at one point too. So I don't know. I really have no idea. But Najee Harris, 1st round tender, that's kind of rough. But he wouldn't have gotten Najee with his pick that he has in the 1st round. Kyle Pitts, I'm not a fan of Kyle Pitts. I know there's a big hype around him. A lot of people wanted him. I'm just not a big fan. And then Joe Burrow, 8th round, you can't go wrong with that. I love that. I dogged the early round quarterback being kept early with Lamar Jackson. The 4th round, or not Lamar, Herbert, who's a 4th round tender. Joe Burrow, 8th round, you can't beat that. I mean, it's a big guy. The guy won a championship for a player in our league last year. So, and has probably one of the best receiving cores in the league. So, yeah, I'm a big Burrow fan, especially the 8th round tender. Najee, yeah. He has another 1st round pick, so it's okay for him to keep one guy. So I'm all for that. I just think Kyle Pitts is the one that I'm like kind of on Kyle Pitts big time. So I like Reuben's team. I think Reuben's going to be fringe playoff next year, kind of like how he was this past year. He might make it, he might not make it. So he'll be like, if he does make it, he'll be like a 6th seed. If he doesn't, he'll be like 7 or 8. So that's where I'm in with that.
So it's kind of interesting. I didn't name the names earlier when I was talking about that divide. And I mentioned that I don't necessarily have a clear defined top, but I said I definitely had a clear defined bottom 5.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all 5 of those teams, because as we know here, this is in reverse order of the standings last year. So starting with myself, so basically Adam through Teja's roster from last year didn't make the playoffs. Then myself through Hoch, obviously those top 6 did. Reuben's actually the only owner in that top 6, in terms of making the playoffs last year, that I have in my bottom 5 for this year.
Huh.
So he's a good owner. I mean, I think he's got talent. It doesn't mean that he can't sneak. He might be towards the top of that bottom 5 group. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have a shot, if everything goes right, to sneak in as a 6th seed. But there's a lot of good competition out there, and I'm not a huge fan of his roster. Just looking at it, Najee Harris is a first-round tender. Kyle Pitts is like late third, early 4th. And then, Burrow and Reed. I mean, the thing is, it's hard to evaluate quarterback, in terms of their tenders, because they add, it gives you a positional advantage going into the draft, not having to worry about taking a quarterback. So it's different in a keeper league. But traditionally, I mean, Burrow's going in like the 5th round, give or take, of redrafts. So when you look at that, and then he doesn't have a first-round pick, he's got the 1st overall pick in the 2nd round. And as you mentioned, there is definitely a drop-off towards the end of that 1st round, where it's like he's basically getting a late 3rd round value, because realistically, like with keepers, the top 36 players are off the board anyways.
Yep.
So after the couple that, fall through the cracks get taken, by the time he's picking, realistically, it's like that 1st pick of a 4th round. So like I just mentioned, Najee Harris is a 1st round tender, but then like Pitts is maybe the early 4th, and then Burrow's like a 5th. So he's missing in a normal draft a 2nd and a 3rd round tender. Like if this was a standard redraft, whoever he takes at that 201 slot is not going to fill that void. At best, maybe it's like a late 3rd round, ADP value. He's missing out significantly on that. And so I think he's not going to have enough, top heaviness to do that. He might be able to hit on some picks and build some good depth on his team. But as we know, a team full of depth without any, bell cows doesn't really get you anywhere in this league. So because of that, I have him in my bottom 5.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's gonna be fringe. If he does make a playoffs, he'll be a 6th seed. If he doesn't, he'll be like a 7th or 8th. I mean, it's a good squad, man. I'm not a fan of Kyle Pitts in 4th round. I'm not a Kyle Pitts fan. He's to show me more. And plus, that team's gonna be trash. Who knows? Mariota may fucking just pepper him the ball all day long because they don't really have anybody. But I guess we'll see. Okay, so the next one, we talked about him earlier. Alex, I want you to go with the guy who was 9th best team last year. The top 4 best team last year, which is Marcus Berry, MPB Fitness. Anybody? Again, Marcus Berry Fitness is back. If you're interested, Marcus Berry Fitness on Twitter, on Instagram, and TikTok. Marcus Berry Fitness. He's back. He's offering good stuff too. Free 2-week challenge with Marcus Berry Fitness. You get your nutrition plans, you get your weight room stuff, daily routines, weekly check-ins. So he'll call you and let you know what ask you how everything's doing. So all that good stuff. So I don't need to go into it again, but it's good stuff there. Marcus Berry Fitness. And yeah, the Keeper Selection Show brought to you by Marcus Berry Fitness. Alex, tell me a little bit about his 3 keepers. And are you a fan of these 3 keepers, Marcus Berry's?
So you mentioned that Marcus Berry Fitness is back. He's back in real life. And I think he's back in fantasy too.
Wow. Bold.
You heard it here. He's a lock to make the playoffs this year. I'm going to dive into his keepers. I'm a fan. I think Marcus Berry is back. He's got his swagger back, and he's locked and loaded. You know what? There's going to be 4 Berries in this playoff. There's going to be myself, Big Berry content. We got Berry's pickup lines. We got Stu's Berry team, and then we got the real MVP Fitness.
Wow.
We're going to have 4 out of the 6 playoff slots designated for Marcus Berry.
Damn.
His keepers, he's got Devontae Adams in the 20th, Tyreek Hill in the 20th, and Austin Eckler in the 3rd. You can't really beat that. I've been going through this ADP thing. He's got Adams, which is a late 1st, Eckler, which is an early 1st, and then Tyreek Hill, which is kind of like a late 2nd round tender right now in fantasy. So he's got 2 firsts and a 2nd going into the draft. He does have limited draft capital. He doesn't have a 1st or a 3rd right now. I don't think he has a 5th either. But
yeah, he doesn't have a 5th. I have it.
But even with that lack of capital, he's going in with 2 first-round value guys, a 2nd round value guy who, Tyreek Hill could blow up and have a huge role in that offense. Additionally, he will still have a 2nd round pick. Like we mentioned, that earlier 2nd, it's probably going to be like a 4th round value, but that's still good depth. having 2 firsts, a second, and like a 4th round tender guy on your roster, regardless of limited draft capital, can carry you a long way. Those guys are all 3 of those guys are week winning players. Meaning, like if your team just kind of lays an egg and one of those guys goes off and has a ridiculous week, you're still in it and you can still win those games. Having 3 of them on your team is definitely a game changer and can win you more games than just an average team in general. I think if those guys stay healthy and he's got a hit on probably 1 or 2 more picks, I think he shouldn't have an issue making the playoffs at all. But he does have to hit. And as you know very well firsthand, Marcus Berry's been known for having some draft day chokes. So I know you'll talk about that in a second. And, I'm sure you have your own thoughts on Berry. But Marcus Berry Fitness is back. Marcus Berry's team's back. Locked in for the playoffs. Give me because he's not the most active owner, I'm not giving him the buy. Give me like a 4 seed for Berry.
Yeah, and in the last few years, he's really locked down that 4 spot. I think he's gotten 4th like good amount of times in the last few years. He's really some would say he's wasted Aaron Rodgers' MVP seasons. He should be winning championships with Aaron Rodgers winning MVPs, but he's not. So that's a different story altogether. But I'm not as high on Berry's team. I think he does make the playoffs, though. I do think so. I'm not as high, though. He doesn't have his picks, so he doesn't have a 1st, doesn't have a 5th, doesn't have a 3rd. So that's so he has a 2nd and a 4th, and then he's got his 3 keepers. I mean, yeah, it's tough. That's gonna be tough. That's second. That's a late 2nd. So that's no, it's early. Yeah, no, it's early 2nd actually. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, he should be all right. It will make a playoffs, but I gotta say, if Berry wasn't winning with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers stack, how's he gonna win with no stack? And we're talking not just any stack. That's a top quality stack. That's a stack that should have been winning championships. Didn't amount to anything. Won 0 championships. That stack. Unfortunate, really. Didn't even get to a championship game. That's bad. But yeah, what I want to see is Marcus Berry's back. He's caring about fantasy again. He's caring about life again. He's caring about flag again. I think it's a real story of a turnaround. I think the Berry's right now, he's first in line for comeback player of the year, to be quite honest with you. We haven't had a comeback player of the year yet, but I think this is it. I think this is the storyline we've been waiting for. Berry, comeback player of the year. I think this is what's going to happen. I mean, he needs to obviously stay within the top 4 again in order to fulfill that comeback player of the year. But he didn't give a shit about fantasy last year. Like, I would call him, he would hang up on me. Alex had preseason last year. We were calling him, he would hang it up. He was hanging up on us. I mean, he's actually willingly to talk right now about fantasy. He's doing off-season trades. He didn't do any off-season trades last year. Like, he's revamped his team, adding Tyreek Hill, a big, I will say Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. The last time they were on a fantasy team together in this league was the year I won the championship 3 years ago. So, I mean, these guys are bringing championship pedigree to the Perkins system, which is Marcus Berry's team. So I'm excited to see what Berry can do. I will say he needs to be more prepared on draft day itself, because we've just seen in his past, we're getting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Berry, go now, man! You're gonna steal. And he'll say anybody. And that's one thing he's got to work on. And I think this is it's actually good practice, because in our flag league, we were getting down to 5 Mississippis, and they were telling him like rush, and they would say go, and then like he would look back at the ref and like, dude, fucking go, and then he would go. A little hesitancy there. The hesitancy happens in fantasy too. So if he just works at it a little bit, I think he'll be all right. So yeah, I think he does make playoffs. And hey, if we get 4 Berry teams in the playoffs of 4 of 6, I think the whole league needs to start changing their team names to MPB something. That's what I think.
Yeah, it'd be unreal. Quick question to you. The stackers are gone. He's keeping, as we know, I think I don't want to reveal everything because we haven't gotten into the last, 3 teams here. There's the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks right now are being kept going into this season. There's not a lot of QB talent left to be drafted. I don't want to name drop right now, but because these aren't, the most glorified quarterbacks, do you see Marcus Berry rejoining the stack with either Tua or Derek Carr?
Who I've talked to him, and he actually wants to draft both those guys. And I'm not just throwing it out there. He really does want to draft both those guys. he's already talked about if he does go and get Tua, he's already thinking about changing his teammate to Mr. 3-0 Stack, with the 5 being the S and Stack. And if he does Derek Carr, he's thinking about a few names right now. What was the one we had? Viva Los Staculus. He's thinking of a few names right now, but yeah, he likes Derek Carr and Tua, and he likes the fact to have both those guys. He could either get a stack with either one, so his backup or a starter. So yeah, he's pretty excited at the potential of moving on from the Green Bay Stackers, the MPB Stackers. But I will say, it was his birthday yesterday. It was Paul's birthday yesterday as well. But next week we have the annual Barry's gonna receive. He's gonna get a jersey put up in the Ring of Honor of the BL Plus headquarters. And that'll be interesting. We'll start off the draft with the trophy ceremony and the retirement of the MB Stackers, and we'll get a taste of that next week. So I can't wait for that. So the next keepers. So we're going to third. We're going to the bronze medal of last year, which is my team. We made that blockbuster move, getting rid of Tyreek Hill. Sad. It was sad for us. We had to do it. We couldn't do the triple stack anymore with a guy who wasn't on the team anymore. So we couldn't call it triple stack. And there's no point in having all three of the guys on the same team anymore. We can't call them a triple stack. So we thought about, okay, well, if we're going to keep our stack together, we have to make it worth it. So we got to get rid of Tyreek Hill in order to get a first round pick back so I can make keeping one of these guys worth it. So we're keeping Travis Kelce with a first round tender. We're keeping Deebo Samuel, who I stole from everybody in the league last year in the 6th round. Everybody was all over Ayuk's jock. I went and got the real guy over there. And then Patrick Mahomes, 8th round tender. So the stack's still there. Patrick Mahomes, I don't know if anyone's watching. He's dominating preseason. I don't know if anyone's watching. I was watching. I was sitting back there in the AC yesterday, freaking heads back, just watching that puppy like Ferris Bueller, baby. He's back, and I'm excited for it. And I gotta say, I think the rationale behind all that was I'm not letting Patrick Mahomes go. I'm going to keep Patrick Mahomes till he fucking retires in this league. 8th round tender, he can't beat it. Deebo Samuel, there are still rumblings that he might become an RB flex. I don't know if it's going to happen yet. And they say if it's not happened yet, it's probably not going to happen, which is unfortunate. But he's got his contract situation figured out. 6th round tender. Trey Lance, in the games he played with him last year, he did target the fuck out of him. So that's good. And yeah, the Kelce's the best tight end in the game. So that's the third. I think that completes the 30 tight ends. Pitts, Andrews, and Kelce of the 3 tight ends that were kept. So those are my keepers. I'm excited about it. I think this is a team that's going to be competing for a championship again this year. And I have the draft capital behind it. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, I think right off the bat, I think you're going to be in a good spot. Right now, Kelsey's going like early second. Deebo is also 2nd round tender, and then obviously Mahomes is, pretty much a top 3 fantasy quarterback, ranked going into this season. So I think you're gonna be in a great position. It depends who you get at that 1st round pick there. I know I've been talking with you about a couple of people. I think you're gonna be primed for a really good season. You could potentially be missing a full bell cow. I mean, it just depends if you hit with that 1st overall pick, but I think having that stack will make up for it. So I think you're definitely going to be in a really good spot for this season. I think just based off that stack, having Deebo, having that early pick, I think you're primed to make the playoffs. Right now, there's not a lot of teams that I'm so fearful of right now. And so it's hard to kind of put you into a ranking. I don't see this as like a 6 seed, just squeaking in. And I don't know if I necessarily see this team like dominating, like lock for a bye week. So I'm going to put you, I kind of have you in like the 3 to 5 range just based off this roster. So that's kind of where I can see you absolutely could get a bye week here. As long as the stack stays healthy and you're able to capitalize on that first round pick, there's no reason, especially, I mean, I think, it's interesting to me because looking at just, especially going through this and saying everything out loud, I think in years past, we've seen like one or two teams that's like, okay, those two teams are pretty much just competing for the championship. Everyone else is just playing along. This year, it's more of a true divide from what I feel like, where it's like, all right, these 6 teams are competing for, basically not being, Tomato King. These 6 teams are actually fighting for a championship. There's no one that I'm really like scared of, but realistically, just looking at this is one of those teams in that top six I think has zero fear to miss the playoffs. And of course, if anything happens and you pick up some momentum, can easily make a deep run.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as I have Patrick Mahomes, I think I'll always be in that conversation. I just think that's how good of a quarterback he is. I think there's just a few games where he got away from his what he did last year, but he's done an amazing year. I just think what we've seen so far in the early season, in the preseason, as well as the spreading the ball around, it's kind of making us. I think our offense is gonna be more dangerous than it was last year. Because I think you're taking away that 2 high safety look. Defenses aren't playing us that way anymore because there's so many guys. Whereas last year it could be like, okay, it's Tyreek and Kelsey. Everybody else, fuck them. Like we're just gonna go too high. But now they can't play us that way because there's so many guys we have in that offense, which is gonna be interesting to see where a lot of these guys go in the draft, because I think a lot of people want to get that receiver, that Tyreek Hill, but I don't think they're gonna find it with the guys we have now. So we'll see. Okay, so our next guy is our co-host Cobb's team. Do you want to take away Ryan Cobb's squad?
Yeah, so Cobb mentioned earlier that he, doesn't have a lot of picks. He's keeping a first and third round, tender. Kind of unlike Cobb, usually he's got a lot of picks. Actually, I think a year or two ago he had like 6 or something picks in the first 3 rounds. So definitely a different philosophy for him going into this draft. So his 3 keepers right now, he's got Joe Mixon in the first, Dalvin Cook in the third, and questionable pick, Russell Wilson in the 12th. Got him from myself. A lot of people, honestly, right now, I've been spending a lot of time in these rankings. I understand he's very high on Russ. Most people have him like in the 10 to 12 ranking in terms of quarterbacks. They have him ranked as like the 10th to 12th overall fantasy quarterback. Surprise keeper for me. I was grateful that I could get, I think, an 8th out of him. I'll take it because I was going to send him back anyways. It's, free draft capital. So, definitely grateful for that. But just looking at this, he's going to have a good team. I mean, you can joke around all you want. Mixon and Dalvin Cook are locks to be first round, picks. Then there's a big gap because realistically, I've seen Russell Wilson like fall to like the 8th, 9th round of some redrafts. So like there's a big gap. I mean, if he does hit and becomes a top 5 quarterback, that's great. He'll have his his 202 pick, as we know. It's kind of like a 4. So he's going into this as 2 first round guys, probably like a 3rd/4th fringe ADP guy, and then he'll have Russ. He'll have to build around it. Here's my biggest fear for Cobb's team. If you look at Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook's track history, I know Mixon played 16 games last year. In general, though, both of these guys have had injury concerns in the past. I don't recall a season where Cooks played over 14 games, the last 13, 14 games over the last like 3-4 years. That's my biggest issue right now. He's so heavily reliant on those 2 guys that I think there will be a drop off on his roster. If they stay healthy, I think he can compete. If one of those guys get hurt at any point in the season, I could see Cobb slipping out of the playoffs. Honestly, right now, as we've been going through this, I've been starting to get these rankings a little bit more clearly in my head. Because he's so heavily reliant, I'm gonna put him finishing in the 6 to 7 range.
Wow.
I think there's a lot of good teams right now, and he's a good owner. 3 times in a row making to the championship, obviously winning the first 2 and fell off last year. The King's been dethroned, and I just think the momentum's not going in his favor right now.
Wow.
I got him finishing 6 to 7. I think Mixon or Cook or both at some point will miss significant time this year, and it will put them kind of into a rut at some point. So I got them as tentatively making the playoffs as that last spot, and potentially if one of those two misses a little bit more time than you want, then falling out of the playoffs.
Here's what I'll say. I agree that Cobb is kind of taking like you kind of saw it writing on the wall last year when he made that trade. When he made the trade for Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman, and like it was just kind of like you see he was kind of sputtering out of control. He was trying to do whatever he could to kind of hang on and at least get a three-peat. And I don't think that's not happening. It didn't happen. And I think that you're right. I think he is fringe playoff. I like his keepers. I think they're better. Like you said, there's a divide, right? So he is on the positive end of that divide on the good keeper side. But, whew, man, Russell Wilson was an awful. I mean, why? Why did he do the Russell Wilson? Unless he's really buying it, but why did he do it? I mean, great for you. I'm glad you got that pick out of him, but he doesn't have the stack with that.
Yeah, it makes sense if he was really high on like Courtland Sutton had him as a keeper, but
yeah. He doesn't have the other guy, and that's just so weird. Like, what? The Russell, when I saw that trade, I was like, huh, okay, he's going to make a move to go get one of the other guys. He didn't. So I wouldn't have kept Russell Wilson. There was a guy on his team that is going to go in the top 4 rounds of this draft, and he would have been another tight end kept. And now that tight end's going back, and they're going to lose his amazing value at 11th round tender. And that's it. Like I like having Cobb like be relevant in this league. I was actually talking with another owner the other day about Cobb's potential keepers. Yeah, I'm just gonna read a quote real fast here. This is good. That's really good, actually. Hold on to make sure I get the exact quote. Hold on. Okay. So he asked me, okay, so he goes, I can't believe Cobb is keeping Mixon and Russ. I go, LOL, Mixon I get, Russ I don't. He goes, but he could have found a deal in the offseason to get a similar keeper for Mixon at a better price. I don't know. It's not like Kelsey was a top tight end. There's no one like him. I said, he's an idiot, LOL. Let him keep both. He goes, oh, I know. I go, Cobb's run is done. So happy, LOL. And he goes, I just don't get it, LOL. And I put a bunch of crying emojis. And he goes, back to his old ways. Time to get back to mine. He put his handshake emoji. I go, it's key. I go, Kittle at an 11th over Russ at 12 should have been the move. He goes, QBs are so deep this year, and Russ isn't going to be like the QB1 or anything. And I go, LOL, no way. Won't even be QB1 in that division. He goes, QB3 in that division. I go, yeah, you're so bad. He goes, so bad. You should make that comment in the show. Quote, great keeper, Cobb, third best QB in the division. Yikes. So we kept going and kept making fun of Cobb, and that was fun. And then he goes, ooh, didn't Cobb trade me Michael Pittman? Like, that could have been the guy. And so I just revealed who that was. It was Stu. Yeah. So there's rumblings around the league of Cobb kind of just being on a slow demise where like he lucked into this amazing team that he had 2 years ago. He was able to trade all those guys from that team to get better picks. And then he still had some of those carry over from the guys in the championship years last year. It helped him get to where he got last year in the championship. And let's not forget, I think a lot of people forget this because that the championship was over right after the fucking Bengals dominated the Chiefs. Cobb was a part of one of the biggest blowouts, the biggest blowout in Basement League Plus championship history. He lost by like 80 points. That no one else has lost there by that much before in a championship game. So Cobb, he made history in that loss. So yeah, I think that's kind of a trend downwards. I still think he makes the playoffs, but yeah, it's gonna be a tough one for him. I'm rooting for Cobb though. I mean, of course, you got to root for host. Okay, so take us away with our championship with our final keeper set.
So obviously Hoch has phenomenal keepers, and I think people probably suspect who he was going to keep. He's obviously keeping Jamar Chase. I believe he's a 6th round tender. He's keeping Justin Jefferson in the 8th, and then Josh Allen, I think, in the 13th. Extremely.
Chase the 5th round tender.
Chase is the 5th. Justin Jefferson, I think, is the 7th.
Yeah.
than Josh Allen. So I know you'll dive into this in a second, and I don't have the exact trade pulled up in front of me. Made one of the dumbest trades I've ever seen in this league in a while. At the end of the day, I mean, yeah, you're losing the stack. Josh Allen is a better keeper, but giving up a first round pick for that, like, if he just had that first round pick and had Burrow over Josh Allen, I mean, realistically, like, let's say Josh Allen does finish it as projected as the QB1 for fantasy this year. Whatever his total, end of season points for is, the difference between that and Burrow is going to be maybe 40 points max. It's not going to be a big spread. Like, even if Burrow finishes QB5 and Josh Allen finishes as, QB1, realistically, the difference overall fantasy points is less than 50 points. It's not something that's going to be a difference maker in the value that you're losing at losing that first round pick and whatever else he gave up, that third round pick, whatever it was, is mind boggling. It makes no sense to me. So dumb trade. I know you'll dive more into that, but those keepers are arguably the best three keepers in the league. I mean, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are lock first round picks. Most rankings have them, 2 and 3 overall in terms of fantasy wide receivers. I've even seen Jefferson up as number 1 in a couple rankings. Josh Allen's the clear number 1 quarterback. So he's in a good spot. The only issue is he's got lack of capital. He doesn't have a lot of picks early. I know he just made a trade recently, and I don't have that pulled up in front of me either, but lack of capital. I think because of those guys, there's no way he doesn't make the playoffs. If he does hit on some picks, I think he's got a good shot to get the bye week. Where things could go wrong for him is if he does, as we know, he takes a lot of shot on rookies typically. If he reaches for a couple guys who don't pan out and one of those guys get hurt, I still think he's a lock to make the playoffs, but you could see an early exit in the quarterfinals from him if that were to happen. Like I said, because of that lack of draft capital and that boneheaded trade, I'm not fearful of this team in the sense of he's destined to repeat. Some may say he will, but I'm not fearful of this team. I think he absolutely has the ceiling to get a bye week. I probably have him finishing anywhere from like 1 to 4, probably somewhere 1 to 4, somewhere in that range. Definitely a top team, but nothing that is, I'm fearful. It'll be a good matchup week 1.
Yes, the trade was Hoch receives Josh Allen, Reuben's 18th, Reuben's 19th. And then Reuben receives Joe Burrow, Hoch a 2nd and Hoch a 3rd. So that was the trade. So he traded Joe Burrow, who won him the championship, on top of 2nd and his 3rd round pick. That first pick of the 2nd round, which is essentially a 1st round pick. And then he traded his 3rd. Yeah, obviously he has the best set of keepers, but you have to look at everything as a whole. And his draft, I mean, I think he's got like, I think right now he's trying to get back up into, I think he's trying to collect more assets in the early rounds, like the 3 through 6. He's trying to collect more assets because he doesn't really have any. I don't know, man. Hoch is an interesting one. He's got such a good football mind, yet he still makes these dumb like draft picks, redraft and rookie this. Dude, look at his bench last year when he won the championship. If you look at his bench, he still had like 6 rookie quarterbacks on it. He had Trevor Lawrence, he had Fields, he had a couple other guys who should not have been roster anymore at that point. So I feel bad that we were able to lose to a guy who had a bench that bad last year. He made the Damian Harris trade during the draft in the 2nd round last year. So like there's a lot of potential for Hoch to fuck things up. And so it never fails because he makes bonehead moves, like trades like this, but he makes them in the draft. And it's just like, we talk about ZT having that being the smartest guy in the room kind of thing about him. Hoch is very much like that, where he sees something that nobody else sees, like nobody else would ever do. He has this, he knows what he's doing, which it worked out for him. He's won the most amount of championships in this league, which I cannot believe that's happened. But I don't think he wins again this year. I think with the amount of draft picks or lack of that he has in the early rounds, I think it's going to come back to bite him. And I think winning the way he did last year. I think he thinks he can do that again. So watch him to do the rookie bullshit thing again this year. And he also told me he wants to draft a lot of Chiefs players, so I don't get them. So like let him do that because I'm like that's fine with me. I don't care. Good, and that's better for everybody else, really, if he does that. I know he's looking at the Chiefs rookie running back right now, Isaiah Pacheco. Go get him, Hoch. It's all you, buddy. You can have him. Yeah, so I think Hoch will be in the playoffs, obviously. I'm just not buying a deep playoff run for him again. I don't think so. He had Chase and he had Burrow. He had the stack last year. He doesn't have the stack. Stack really will do a lot. Because if you look independently, take the stack away from him in the championship last year or in the semifinals, he wouldn't have beaten me. Give him a quarterback who had 25 or a 30. He would have lost to me in the semis. So like the stack helps a lot. And I think he's forgetting that because that's the reason why he won. And so when he shipped Burrow away, I'm like, dude, I get Josh Allen's a better overall keep as far as 13th. And Josh Allen runs and does a lot of things, but come on, man. But Hoch was probably that trade was a product of him watching that AFC Championship game where Josh Allen got dominated and lost. And he was like, no, I want that guy. Like, I want him on my team. So, who knows? But not buying it. So Alex, I'm going to ask you real quick, as I asked Cobb, if you were to base the championship on draft capital and keepers right now, and obviously who you think has a better draft mind, who would you say is the championship? Who's going to win the championship this coming year?
I mean, it's tough because, you always want to say your team is the best and everything like that. I see a really good path for my team if certain players hit, but I'm not gonna go that route because I'm just gonna go based off rankings right now. I see my team, in the, projecting in the future where people overstep what their ADP is and stuff like that, and hitting people hit their ceilings and whatnot. Realistically, I'll do you one better. I'll give my top 6.
That's fine
right now. In no order, if I had to predict the top, I'm not gonna say championship because, like I said, draft minds have to do a lot with projecting to make the playoffs and try to have players that are going to peak for the playoffs and stuff like that. Hopefully, I always hope my team can do that. Realistically, right now, how I think the end standings will finish, not necessarily no order. Getting the buys, I have Paul and Hoch.
Wow.
It gets a little sticky between 3 through 5. I think I have, in no order, I have you, me, and Barry 3 through 5, somewhere in that ranking. And I think I have Stu at 6 with Cobb having to win and get in week 14 and him coming up just short and unfortunately becoming the 7th seed. That's where I have it right now.
Poor guy. So I don't have a top 6 in mind. I just have a general where I think people will go. I think based on keepers and based on draft capital and where they pick in the draft and how much I trust their draft strategy, I'm going to go something a little out of nowhere. I said earlier on the show that I think this guy is going to be one of the teams that didn't make the playoffs that makes the playoffs from last year to this year. I said Stu. And honestly, I'm looking at who's available and I'm looking at his keepers and where I grade his keepers and their tenders and his draft capital. I think Stu has probably the best set of keepers with keeping draft capital and also their tenders and where he picks in the first round of the draft. Now, if all his guys stay healthy, and that's been a big thing with him, his guys can't stay healthy for whatever reason. He just has bad luck. If his guys stay healthy and he drafts good and he hits on all his picks that he should be hitting on, I think Stu's the team I think Stu for me is my championship this year. The champion. He's gonna win. He's gonna win the league based on capital and keepers. This is obviously next week when we're having our show, debriefing the draft. Obviously, this is gonna be totally different for us because we'll actually see what the team looks like. But right now, based on capital, where they pick and their keepers, I think Stu's my champion right now. So that's where I have it. I think, you can make a case for 5 other teams to be in that conversation, but I think Stu, based on capital and where his keepers are, and where he picks in the draft, I think him right now, he's got a good little head start on being a champion for next year. So that's where I have it. But guess we'll see. Less than a week away, people. So I'm excited for the draft. It's one of the biggest events of the year in Nova. I mean, really
might be the biggest.
It probably is the biggest live draft spectacle in the DMV. Really, it is. Every year it is. So excited for that and excited for Cobb's afterwards. For anybody who wants to go and just kick it with the boys. Then the following day is a Summer Bowl. So they'll be out too late on draft night. So that does it for us. Thanks for tuning in to BL Plus, the Cobb and Dash show presented by Marcus Berry Fitness. We'll see you guys at the draft. Can't wait.